Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive, and I am so pumped for this one
Oh, yeah.
because we are talking all about vision,
I know it's going to be good.
how we see, how our eyes work, all that good stuff.
Absolutely.
We've got this really cool document in Portuguese. It's called Biophysica da Visão,
Okay.
which basically means the biophysics of vision.
Makes sense.
And yeah, so we're going to be like diving into light and color and all the amazing things that make it possible for us to see.
Yeah. And you know what I think we should start with?
What?
That just crazy fact that light travels so much faster than sound.
Yeah.
Like, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, like think about it. We can actually use the time difference between seeing lightning and hearing thunder to figure out how far away a storm is.
Yeah, exactly. It's because light travels at like 300,000 kilometers per second.
Oh,
But sound is way slower, only about 340 meters per second.
huge difference.
Huge. So when you see that flash of lightning and then you count the seconds until you hear the boom, you're basically measuring how long it took for that sound to travel.
Okay, so let's say I see a lightning bolt and then I hear the thunder like 5 seconds later.
5 seconds. Okay, so sound travels roughly 1 kilometer every 3 seconds.
Okay.
So a 5-second delay means that the lightning was about 1.6 kilometers away.
That's so cool.
It's like a built-in distance calculator
I know.
right in your head.
That is super cool. Okay, so we've talked about the speed of light, but our source material also mentions that the light we see, the stuff that makes all the colors and everything, is actually just this tiny sliver of a much bigger thing called the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah, it's like we can only see one little slice of this massive rainbow of energy.
That's crazy. So what else is out there that we can't see?
Oh man, there's so much. Like, imagine a piano keyboard,
Okay, I'm imagining it.
and the visible light that we see is just 1 octave
Oh, wow.
on this massive keyboard.
Okay.
But there's so much more. You've
Yeah.
got radio waves and microwaves, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays, all different types of light that are totally invisible to us.
So, like, are there animals that can see these other kinds of light?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like
Yeah.
some birds and insects can actually see ultraviolet light.
What?
I know.
That's insane.
Isn't that wild? So they might see patterns on flowers or like markings on other birds that we can't even imagine.
That is so cool. It makes you wonder, like, what their world looks like.
Right.
So crazy. Okay, so we've talked about light itself, but what about the sources of light?
Okay, good question.
Our document talks about, like, primary and secondary light sources.
Right, so primary light sources are like the rock stars. They're the ones that actually emit their own light.
Okay,
So think about the sun, obviously a light bulb, or even a firefly.
got it. So they're like the originators.
Exactly. Then you have secondary light sources, which are more like the backup singers.
Okay.
They don't produce their own light. They just reflect light that's coming from a primary source.
Oh, so like the moon,
The moon, perfect example.
it's reflecting the sun's light.
Exactly.
So that means like a book, my clothes, even my hand are all secondary sources.
they're all just bouncing light that's coming from somewhere else.
Okay, now for something a little more glamorous, what about luminescence?
Ooh, luminescence.
This is where it gets really cool.
I know. Let's talk about fluorescence first.
Fluorescence? Oh, like those glow-in-the-dark stars I had on my ceiling as a kid.
You know what? Those are actually phosphorescent, but we'll get to that in a sec.
Okay.
Fluorescence is what you see in like fluorescent lamps. They have a special gas inside that emits light when it's zapped with an electrical current.
And that's why they're so bright.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like a supercharged glow.
That's awesome. So then what about those glow-in-the-dark toys and stickers? How do those work?
Okay, so that's phosphorescence, which is another type of luminescence.
Okay.
These materials actually absorb light energy,
Okay.
and then they slowly release it over time.
That's why they glow in the dark.
Exactly. It's like they're storing the light and then letting it out bit by bit.
I love that. So we've covered some basics of light itself, but now I really want to get into like how our eyes actually work.
Let's do it.
How do they take in all this light and let us see the world?
Right. Well, it all starts with how light interacts with different materials
Okay.
and how that affects what we see. Like imagine light going on a road trip
Okay.
through different landscapes. Sometimes it's smooth sailing, sometimes it hits some detours, and sometimes it runs into a dead end.
I like that analogy. So what are these different landscapes for light?
We can break them down into 3 main types.
Hit me with it.
First up, you have transparent materials.
Transparent.
Yeah, think of it like an open highway, like just zips right through with no problem.
Okay, so like clear glass or water.
You get a nice clear view because the light isn't getting messed with.
Got it. What's next?
Next, you have translucent materials.
Translucent.
So this is more like driving on a foggy road. Light can still get through, but it gets scattered along the way.
Okay.
So things look blurry when you view them through translucent materials like frosted glass.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the last type?
All right, the last type is opaque materials. This is like hitting a roadblock. Light just can't get through it all.
Oh, okay, so a solid wall or like a thick book.
Yep, those block light completely, which is why you can't see through them.
So it's all about how easily light can travel through things.
Exactly.
Now, what about this thing called refraction? I saw it mentioned in our source material.
Oh, refraction. That's all about how light bends when it goes from one medium to another.
Like from air to water.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It happens because light actually changes speed when it travels through different stuff.
Wait, light slows down.
It does. And this change in speed makes the light bend, which is why a straw in a glass of water looks broken, even though it's not really broken.
Oh, right. I've definitely noticed that. Is that what causes rainbows, too?
You're on the right track.
Yeah.
Rainbows are formed by a similar thing called dispersion.
Dispersion.
Yeah. You know how when you shine white light through a prism, it splits into all the colors of the rainbow?
Yeah, classic science experiment.
Well, that's dispersion in action. It's because white light is actually a mix of all those colors, and each color bends a little differently when it goes through the prism. So they spread out, and you get that rainbow effect.
So like water droplets in the air act like tiny prisms.
Exactly. They split sunlight into all those beautiful colors.
Nature is so cool.
I know, right? There's another cool concept mentioned in the document called disco de Newton, or Newton's disk.
Newton's disk. I don't think I've heard of that.
It's basically a disk that's divided into segments, each painted a different color of the rainbow. When you spin it really fast, all those colors blend together. And guess what you see?
I'm gonna guess white.
You got it. It creates this illusion of white light, which shows us that how we see color isn't just about the light itself, but also about how our brain processes it.
Wow. So even our perception of color is kind of an illusion created by our brains.
In a way, yeah. It's all about how our brain interprets the information it's getting.
That's amazing. Okay, so we've talked about light and where it comes from and this whole idea of the electromagnetic spectrum. Now I want to know, how does an object's color actually work?
Okay, so the color we see is actually the color that the object reflects, not the color it absorbs.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so think about a red apple.
Okay.
When white light, which contains all the colors, shines on it, the apple absorbs all the colors except red.
So it's like sucking up all the other colors.
Exactly.
Right.
And then it reflects the red light back.
And that's what we see.
Exactly.
So a black object absorbs all the colors,
Which is why it looks dark.
and a white object reflects all the colors.
Which is why it looks bright.
This is blowing my mind.
It's pretty cool, right?
Our eyes and brains are doing so much work.
They really are. And it gets even crazier when you consider that humans have 3 types of color-sensitive cells in their eyes called cones.
3 types.
Yep. And these cones allow us to see this whole range of colors, which is called trichromatic vision.
Wow. Are there any animals that have more cones than that?
Yes, some birds and fish actually have 4 types of cones.
What?
Yeah, they have what's called tetrachromatic vision, which means they can see even more colors than we can, including ultraviolet light.
Wow. I can't even imagine what their world must look like.
They must be incredibly vibrant.
That's amazing. Okay, so we've covered light, color, how they work together. I think I'm ready to talk about the star of the show,
The eye.
the eye itself.
Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Oh,
All right, so let's talk about the eye itself. How does this incredible organ actually take in light and create the images we see?
well, it's like a really fancy camera. You know?
I like that.
Yeah, it captures the light, focuses it, and then forms an image that our brain can understand.
So what are the key parts of this camera that make it all work?
Okay, so first you have the cornea, which is the clear outer layer of the eye.
Okay.
That's like the window of the camera letting the light in.
Okay.
Then you've got the lens.
The lens.
Which is this flexible structure that can actually change shape to focus the light.
Okay.
And that focused light lands on the retina.
So the retina is kind of like the film or the image sensor in a digital camera.
Exactly. It's this super thin layer of cells at the back of the eye that captures the light and converts it into electrical signal.
And that's where the rods and cones come in, right?
You got it. The rods and cones are these special photoreceptor cells in the retina.
Okay.
And they're the ones that do the actual work of turning light into those electrical signals.
Okay, so can you break it down for me? What do rods and cones actually do?
Sure. So rods are really sensitive to light, even in low light conditions.
Okay.
So they're the ones that help us see at night or in dim lighting.
So they're like our night vision goggles.
Exactly. And they also help us with our peripheral vision, seeing things off to the side.
Okay, that makes sense. What about cones?
Cones are all about color and detail.
Okay.
They work best in bright light, and they allow us to see those sharp, colorful images.
Okay.
And they're mostly concentrated in the fovea, which is this tiny spot in the center of the retina where we have our sharpest vision.
So rods for low light and peripheral vision cones for color and sharp details.
You got it. We need both to get the full picture.
That's amazing. Okay, so once the rods and cones create those electrical signals, what happens next?
Those signals travel through the optic nerve, which is like a cable connecting the eye to the brain.
Okay.
And the brain is like the control center. It takes those signals and interprets them, turning them into the images we see.
That's wild. It's like the brain is putting together a puzzle.
Yeah, kind of. And speaking of the structure of the eye, have you ever heard of the blind spot?
Yeah, the blind spot. What's up with that?
It's actually pretty interesting. So the blind spot is the area where the optic nerve leaves the eye.
Okay.
And because there are no photoreceptor cells, we can't actually see anything in that spot.
So we all have this tiny hole in our vision.
We do.
Hmm.
But the cool thing is that our brain is so smart, it fills in the missing information based on what it sees around the blind spot.
So we don't even notice it.
Nope. Our brain just seamlessly creates a complete picture even though there's a gap in the data.
That is incredible. Okay, another thing I've always wondered about is how we adjust our focus to see things at different distances.
Ah, that's thanks to a process called accommodation.
Accommodation.
Yeah, we have these tiny muscles in our eyes called ciliary muscles,
Yeah.
and they control the shape of the lens.
Okay.
So when we look at something far away, the muscles relax and the lens becomes thinner and flatter.
Okay.
But when we look at something close up, the muscles contract and the lens gets thicker and more rounded.
It's like our eyes have a built-in zoom lens.
Exactly. It's pretty amazing, but it's also a system that can have some glitches,
Yeah.
leading to vision problems.
Right, like nearsightedness and farsightedness.
Yeah, exactly. So myopia or nearsightedness happens when the eyeball is a little too long or the cornea is too curved.
Okay.
So the light ends up focusing in front of the retina instead of directly on it.
So people with myopia have trouble seeing things that are far away?
Exactly. Distant objects look blurry.
Yeah.
And then you have hyperopia or farsightedness, which is kind of the opposite. The eyeball is too short or the cornea is too flat, so the light focuses behind the retina.
And that makes it hard to see things up close.
Right. Close-up objects are the blurry ones in that case.
It's all about where that focal point lands.
You got it. And as we get older, the lens in our eye can also become less flexible,
Okay.
which can lead to presbyopia.
Presbyopia.
Yeah, that's the age-related farsightedness that makes it harder to focus on things up close.
Oh, so that's why people need reading glasses as they get older.
Exactly. It's a natural part of aging.
Here.
And then there's astigmatism,
Astigmatism.
which is when the cornea or the lens has an irregular shape.
Oh, okay.
So the light gets focused unevenly on the retina.
So that's what causes blurry vision.
Yeah, it can make things look distorted at any distance.
Okay, and what about color blindness?
Color blindness, also known as daltonism,
Okay.
happens when there's a problem with the color-sensitive cones in the eye.
So some people can't see certain colors?
Yeah, the most common type is red-green color blindness. But there are other variations too, and it can range from mild to severe. Some people just have trouble distinguishing certain shades, while others might only see the world in shades of gray.
That's a huge range.
It is. And then, of course, there are more serious conditions like cataracts and glaucoma.
Right.
Cataracts cloud the lens of the eye, and glaucoma damages the optic nerve.
And those can lead to vision loss?
Yeah, that's why regular eye exams are so important.
Absolutely. Early detection is key. Okay, so we've talked about light and color and the structure of the eye. But how does it all come together to give us depth perception, that 3D view of the world?
That's where binocular vision comes in.
Binocular vision.
Yeah, it's all about the fact that we have two eyes,
Okay.
and they're spaced slightly apart.
Right.
So each eye actually sees a slightly different view of the world.
Like two cameras capturing the same scene from different angles.
Exactly. And our brain takes those two slightly different images and combines them.
Okay.
And that's what gives us that sense of depth and three-dimensionality.
Our brain is doing so much work.
It really is. There's a cool way to actually experience this merging process.
Oh, tell me.
Okay, so hold your index finger up in front of your face and focus on it.
Okay, got it.
Now slowly cross your eyes until you see two images of your finger.
I see it. It's like my finger doubled.
Now keep focusing, and you should see a third image appear between the two original ones.
Oh, wow, I see it. That's like a 3D ghost finger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the merged image that your brain is constantly creating to give you that sense of depth.
That is so cool. Okay, now I have to ask about optical illusions.
Optical illusions, oh yeah, those are fun.
They're like visual puzzles that trick our brains.
They really are. and they tell us a lot about how our visual system works.
Okay, so what are some examples from the source material?
One classic one is the spinning dancer illusion.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that one. It's that silhouette of a dancer and you can't tell which way she's spinning.
Exactly.
Okay.
Some people see her spinning clockwise, others see her going counterclockwise, and some even see her switching directions.
It's so weird.
It is. And it just shows how our brain relies on context and assumptions to make sense of what it's seeing.
Okay, so our brain is filling in the blanks.
Yeah, sometimes it jumps to conclusions based on our past experiences, which can lead to these really interesting perceptual shifts.
That's fascinating. So what are some other examples where our brain fills in the gaps?
Well, there's the triangle phantom illusion.
Triangle phantom illusion.
Yeah, where you see a white triangle that appears to be layered on top of other shapes,
Okay,
even though the triangle isn't actually there.
so we're seeing something that doesn't exist?
Kind of. Our brain creates the triangle based on the arrangement of the other shapes and our expectations of how objects should look.
Wow, that's trippy. Okay, what about after image illusions?
Oh, after images, those are the ones where you stare at something bright and then look
Mm.
away and see a ghostly image.
Yeah, like if you stare at a light bulb and then look at a blank wall, you see a dark spot.
Exactly.
Mm.
It happens because the photoreceptor cells in your retina get tired after being exposed to that bright light.
Yeah.
So when you look away, those tired cells send weaker signals, and your brain interprets that as the opposite color.
So if I stare at a blue light, I'll see a yellow after image.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And red and green are complementary colors, so they create the strongest after-image effect.
That's so cool. Okay, one more illusion. What about the expanding tap illusion?
Oh, yeah, that one's fun. So if you focus on one of several identical dots arranged in a circle,
Okay.
the other dots will seem to expand outward.
Really? I've never seen that one.
It's because our brain tends to exaggerate changes in size when something is the center of our attention.
So it's all about what we're focusing on.
Yeah, it shows how our perception of size and distance can be influenced by where we're directing our attention.
It's amazing how our brains are constantly shaping our visual experience.
It really is.
Yeah.
We're not just passively observing the world, we're actively constructing it based on the information our eyes provide and the interpretations our brain makes.
That's a great way to put it. Optical illusions are such a fun and fascinating way to explore how our visual system works. I'm honestly blown away by how much goes into just opening our eyes and seeing.
You know, it's like this whole hidden world of complexity.
Exactly, we just assume we'll see, but it's incredible how delicate and intricate this whole process of vision really is.
And we're still learning so much about it.
That's true. There's so much more to discover.
Like, think about all the incredible ways that animals see the world
Right.
and the crazy technology that's being developed to help people with vision problems.
It's really exciting stuff. So before we...
It hits your cornea, passes through the lens, lands on the retina,
And then...
and then those amazing photoreceptor cells, the rods and cones,
Yeah.
they transform that light into these electrical signals,
Crazy.
which zip along the optic nerve to your brain.
To create the images we see.
It's a chain reaction of wonder.
It really is, and it makes you realize how important it is to take care of our eyes.
Absolutely.
Get those regular checkups.
Protect that precious gift of sight.
I love that. And I also think everyone should keep exploring those optical illusions.
Oh, yeah, those are so fun.
They're not just brain teasers. They really show us how our visual system can be tricked and how our brain is constantly working to make sense of the world.
Totally. They remind us that our perception isn't always perfect.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
It's an interpretation, a construction that our brain creates.
Well said. I think that's the perfect note to end on.
I agree.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the biophysics of vision.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep looking closely at the world around you and marveling at the wonders of sight